Welcome to the Regenerative Brands podcast. This is a place for consumers, operators, and investors to learn about the consumer brands supporting regenerative agriculture and how they're changing the world. This is your host, Kyle, joined by my co-host, AC, who's going to take us into the episode.
On this episode, we have Hovik Azadkhanian, who is the founder and CEO of Heirloom Coffee Roasters. Heirloom Coffee Roasters is supporting regenerative agriculture with its 6 SKU lineup of Regenerative Organic Certified whole bean coffees. In this episode, we learn how Hovik is carrying on his family's legacy as a third-generation coffee roaster, how the brand has grown from one Bay Area retail location to going nationwide with Sprouts in less than a year, and why regenerative agriculture is the key to saving coffee. One thing is clear from this episode, folks. When people tell Hovik he can't do something, he is going to do whatever he can to prove them wrong. This spirit underpins Heirloom's audacious goals, which range from selling 100% regenerative organic certified coffee to pioneering emissions-free electric roasting and much more. Let's dive in. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Regen Brands podcast. This crew is fresh off of Expo West, and we are excited to have Hovik from Heirloom Coffee Roasters joining us. So welcome, Hovik.
How's it going, guys?
It's going well. I wouldn't say that I'm feeling fresh after Expo West, personally. I'm struggling here with a little bit of a cough, so I want to apologize ahead of time to our listeners. I'll do my best to toggle mute when I can. But yeah, Expo West was great. It was great to connect with all the Regen brands out there. It was super cool we had a few people come up to us and say, hey, you don't know me, but I listen to the podcast. I really love it.
Yeah.
And that was like one of the coolest things. So super cool. But yeah, we're here with Hovik today, who you may have guessed it is drinking a coffee. So
cheers, guys.
Hovik, give us a quick lay of the land. Like, what SKUs do you produce, and where can people find your products today?
Yeah, Heirloom is available across the country in Sprouts stores. We're nationwide with Sprouts, and we're nationwide distributed through KeHE. We produce a total of 9 SKUs, but our is really 6 of our main SKUs, and those are all 100% regenerative organic certified coffees that we distribute. I think it's at this point in time is the largest set available nationwide for rock certified coffees.
Love it.
Hey, give us the flavors. I need to like feel the flavors here. Is it beans versus ground? Like,
yeah. So it's all beans. We don't do any ground coffee. We're coffee roasters, and we're specialty coffee roasters, and everything in my life revolves around excellent coffee. So I have a pretty firm belief that whole bean coffee is a better option for your mornings. Not knocking anybody. If you buy pre-ground, that's fine. But we're a whole bean company. The 6 SKUs that we have, so we have our Good Food Award-winning coffee. That's our Sugar Phoenix blend. That's, from what I understand, the first regenerative coffee SKU to ever win the Good Food Award. That's our main product. That's like a medium roast. We have our Pacayel Honey Lot, which is the first, again, as I understand, first nationally distributed honey processed coffee, and that's 100% rock certified. We have our Bedrock blend, which and the Pacayel is like a lighter roast. Our Bedrock blend is a dark roast. It's the darkest roast that we roast in house, and so we don't quite take it as far as a French roast, but it's certainly very bold, and we call it like the Bedrock because it's the bedrock foundation of your day. If you're a dark roast drinker, that is also 100% rock. Then we have our Daylark blend, and we have our Goldenrod blend, which are both really easy to drink medium roasted coffees. Our coffees are very sweet naturally. Heirloom roasting, we use something called a culinary roasting style that we developed in house. I'm sure we can talk about that in a little bit. But it's a very sweet tasting, naturally very sweet tasting coffee, very easy to drink. And so we pride ourselves on being absolutely one of the best quality coffees available on the store shelf. And then, of course, being 100% rock certified is critical to us.
Hovik, I have to appreciate the way you're already talking about coffee. There's a level of intensity and education I'm already feeling. And I also have to ask you, and this might be an impossible question for you to answer, but like, which of these is your favorite? What are you drinking right now, and why?
Did you?
Right now I'm drinking our Sugar Phoenix blend. It's so I kind of switch back and forth. I usually start my mornings at around 4 or 5 in the morning. because I work about an hour and a half away, so I like to get into the factory early. And so I start my mornings off drinking the Pacayal honey lot. That's the honey processed coffee that's 100% rock certified. That is a very sweet, very honey-like coffee. I kind of liken it to sipping a really, really nice scotch. It's a sipping coffee. It's absolutely delicious, very syrupy. But then as I get to work, I switch to Sugar Phoenix because I want something just slightly more intense in flavor. So it's a little darker of a roast. And I think it's a little more like badass sounding. So I like to get a little energy in the mornings. The caffeine from the Pacayal doesn't do anything for me. It's when I get in. It's, after my fifth cup of coffee, I think that's when I have enough energy to go through the day. But yeah, Sugar Phoenix is right now is what I'm drinking in my cup.
That's amazing. I love it. I'm a fellow fan of coffee and caffeine, and I had a little bit at Expo, so I appreciate that. And that was awesome.
We have to send you some. Take a note.
It's really clear how like that.
Anthony and I went to breakfast after Expo West, and he brought in a little plastic baggie his own little coffee. Like that's how serious he is.
Good. I'm glad.
I've never
I'm
seen
glad to know.
Before, so.
I'm glad to know I'm talking to fellow enthusiasts because
Kyle doesn't drink coffee, so I'm your only hope on this episode. Kyle's a no coffee guy.
Enthusiast.
There you
Singular.
go.
Got it. Okay.
Great correction.
There you go. I already have like 1,000 questions from what you just given us on the roasting process and kind of the manufacturing process, and it's cool to continue to see once again this theme among the regenerative brands of the regenerativeness doesn't just stop at the farm; it continues into the manufacturing. So I want to make sure we talk about that. But before we go there, it's really clear that you've been doing this for a long time, man. So give us, your background story and how kind of Heirloom came to be.
Yeah, I've been in the coffee industry basically my whole life. I started to roast coffee with my dad at like 8 years old. My friends are like outside playing soccer, and I was sitting there sweeping the factory floor. At the time, it was a very small coffee shop. And I remember like hating it very much because I just wanted to go out and play soccer. But my dad was really insistent on me learning the craft. And it was really something that I appreciated later in life because I've basically done nothing else for the past 30 years but coffee. And I've been in a very unique situation, a little different than traditional coffee roasters. So the story kind of starts with my dad. He moved to the U.S. in the 50s when he was 16 years old, didn't speak a word of English, didn't know what he was going to do. And he moved to the U.S., started working and following, what he saw as his American dream. And his mother had some experience in roasting coffee. So, he kind of knew that craft, and he went to school. He wanted to become a doctor. He ended up bailing on that dream to start a business because he saw in America, you can really make something for yourself with nothing. And so he started a small coffee company. It was a small coffee shop. The coffee shop grew, did really well. Then he opened another coffee company that was like more of a B2B style. And he ended up selling that to his business partner. And then, he kept his brand, and that's kind of where I grew up. And then in 2018, the partner called me up and said, "Hey, I want to retire. Your dad kind of taught me everything about this business. So I think it's fair for me to give you first dibs." And so I ended up buying the business, the building, and the manufacturing space. And that was like a really big risk for me because I had to take on a major, it was a major thing. Mortgage my house. It was a very, very scary time because I didn't, I had to bring the company back into the family somehow. And my business partner, who's basically like one of my best friends and a very close mentor, he helped me kind of he guided me through the financing part of this. And so we ended up buying the business and the building in November of 2018. And I was like, awesome. We bought this factory. And I said, but the reason I bought this is I want to start my own coffee brand, and I want it to be something that is incredible. But we kind of put it off to the side. We're focusing on the current B2B business. And so that was beginning of 2019, that was our first year in business. And that was kind of cool. We were doing a good job and it was fun. And then 2020 hit, that's when the pandemic hit, and the factory kind of like went silent for a while. And that was very scary because I just put up all this equity, or I put up all this collateral to buy the business. And I was like, wow, we're kind of in a weird spot now. And so that's when I took a step back. I said, look, this is the best opportunity. We can kind of really dial down how we want to run this company. And we ended up clearing out the entire factory. We took everything outside and one by one brought things back in, cleaned shop, made it like a hyper food safe environment, and made it as operationally efficient as possible, added some more roasting capacity, and tried to become, in my eyes, the best coffee roasting company that we could be. And so that was an interesting journey because at that time I had a lot of spare time to kind of think about what I wanted to do. So I was like, I'm going to start a coffee brand. Can't be that hard. I've been in coffee forever. So this is really easy. Pick a nice label. That is not how it worked out. It was very
shocking.
Yeah, I know. Who'd have thought? So we launched our first coffee brand, and that failed miserably. And so I was like, okay, I learned a lot, but at the same time,
different.
Yeah. It had nothing to do with Heirloom. Yeah.
Okay.
It was didn't last very long. It was around for like 6 months, and so we pulled the plug. But that had nothing to do with regenerative coffee. The thing is, I've been in coffee for so long, and I've seen the supply chain. And we ended up roasting, just as an activity that we do in this factory. We roasted a lot of coffee for other brands, and so we did a lot of private label. And I was able to kind of see different sustainability promises and how they manifest into the product on the shelf. And I started to kind of like scratch my head a little bit, and I said, there's a lot of claims on these bags, and I kind of know what went into it, and it's just they're not connected. And so I got a little upset, and I started to do a lot more research, and then I found out that basically I found out the world is likely not going to be able to produce specialty grade coffee by 2050. And so that to me was like a major alarm because I'm a third generation coffee roaster. I come from a line of really hard work, and I want my kids to have something to do one day that's related to the coffee industry. And so I was very concerned about that. And so I started to learn about sustainable farming and sustainable farming practices across the equator, which is like super different than how it's done in the United States.
Right.
And there were a few certifications at the time, but then I started to research some of the. So I started to learn some of the research that the Rodale Institute was putting out, and I kept hearing this word regenerative, and I kind of like glanced over it, and I was like, okay, that's like probably just another buzzword or something. It can't be that big of a deal. And then I just started reading. I was like, oh my God, hold on. This could actually save the future of coffee. And then, of course, I realized it could probably save the entire food system, not just coffee. But okay, this is my calling. Like, I think I have to save the future of coffee. So
love that.
No big deal. No pressure. First, I'm just sort of brand to see what happens. Now let's save the future of the world, or coffee, or both.
Yeah, so we said, okay, we're going to start the first regenerative coffee brand, 100% regenerative coffee brand. It's going to be everything about it is going to be regenerative. We were introduced to a company called Sustainable Harvest, and they're a relationship company. So they're not a typical coffee distributor or broker. They introduce and maintain the relationship between roasters and farmers. And they were leading the way in rock certified coffee. The very first rock certified coffee farm in the world ever commercially available came out of Nicaragua. And we ended up buying one of the first containers of that coffee. It was us and two other coffee companies ended up buying those first like 1 or 2 containers. And I was like, dude, I have to be first here. So I ran over to the port with my car and I said, how do I make sure I get the first bag of coffee off this container? He's like, sir, this is a sterile area. What are you doing? Dude, how'd you get past security? I was like, I know this sounds ridiculous, but I have to get that first bag. And they're like, who is this guy? And so, long story short, it is a very long story how I ended up doing it, but we ended up getting the first bag of coffee into my car, and I ran back to my Oakland roastery and I roasted it on my IR5 5 kilo Diedrich roaster. And so that was the first batch of rock certified coffee like ever. And then we ended up adding that to our SKU list. That was the Cooperativa Sakakli, and it was phenomenal coffee. And that was the birth of kind of the movement for us. We ended up adding that as a SKU. And by the way, this is like, I think it's 2022. So yeah, it was not that long ago.
Yeah.
Very recently. But if we go back a little bit, like we started this brand, there was no regenerative coffee available. There was nothing, like farms weren't practicing regenerative agriculture by definition. They were practicing regenerative agricultural practices. They've been doing it for many years, in fact, centuries. But regenerative organic certification was very new to coffee, and it just didn't exist. So when we launched, nothing was rock certified, but they were all organic certified and all regeneratively grown. And so we knew that all the farms that we were sourcing from would eventually reach rock certification.
Hovik, question for you. Before kind of the regen epiphany, were you already like a big fan of organic, and you already kind of had an understanding with this coffee legacy that the way that it's grown is like super important, and like sustainability is super important? Like what was the paradigm you were operating out of before you kind of went like, hey, we got to support rock? Like,
yeah, I was very familiar with organic farming and fair trade farming. It's always been a part of what we do here. And for me, I really wanted to connect more with the origin and with the farmer. And the stories were very similar. So as I was learning, like, the world is in trouble, no coffee by 2050, that doesn't sound very good. But like, also, the first thing that I thought about was, like, I thought of my dad's story. He left the family farm because he saw no future in the farm, and he moved to the big city, in his case, the big country. And that was at a very different time. But the story resonated, and it keeps repeating itself. And so I was like, what are the kids of these farmers going to do? They're going to go move to the cities and work in something else. Who's going to farm our food? Like, this is kind of an existential risk. And so the stories were so aligned, and I was like, okay, this is really important. But organic and fair trade farming, in terms of coffee, this has been a part of our offerings for the past 20 something years. And yeah, regenerative was a step beyond. The problem is with organic farming, there's the NOP approved list, right? There's organic doesn't mean pesticide free or chemical free. It just means you're allowed to use approved pesticides and chemicals. So like, kind of not really doesn't, for coffee, it's very different. The industry, the coffee category is very focused on sustainability, at least in the specialty category. And these certifications are very important for the farmers. So yeah, I was very involved with organic and fair trade beforehand, and I was really happy to be at the forefront of the regenerative organic, call it a movement. So our tagline is pioneering the regenerative coffee revolution.
Hovik, I kind of feel like your tagline should be "Coffee is life." You strike me as the Danny Rojas. If anybody's seen Ted Lasso, like, soccer is life. Or football. Sorry, football is life. Like, when you said like we're not going to have coffee by 2050, that's like the first thing that popped into my head is like, this is the Danny Rojas of coffee. So just want to call that out.
It's concerning. It's scary. I don't want to drink tea.
Right. I get it. But one thing I want to ask, and this might seem like kind of an off the wall question, but why did you choose the name Heirloom? And what does that word mean to you? Because I said it's an interesting conversation today. Like, what does heirloom mean? Because, I mean, you can have heirloom tomatoes, you can have heirloom chickens, you can have heirloom cows. Like, so why that name, and what does it mean to you?
It's an excellent question. First thing we thought of when we were naming the company, I mean, we did a whiteboard exercise, and we had like 20 different names on the wall. And Heirloom was them, and we're doing our decision-making process. My head kept going to tomatoes, and I was like, I don't want people thinking we're a tomato company. It's like, it doesn't really work. But then I said, okay, I kind of have to think about this. And I'm really fortunate to live an hour and a half away because I have a lot of time to think. And so I kind of wanted to, for me, it was important to tell my family's story in some way, shape, or form, but also I wanted to pay homage to the varietals that are used in regenerative organic farming. And so generally, not always, because there's a supply constraint, but almost always we try to buy coffees that are heirloom varietals of coffee that have been around for many hundreds of years. And I want to pay homage to the guys who started, or the people that started this movement by accident, just by normal farming methods. And so heirloom really kind of fit. It's also something that the more you say it, the more it kind of sticks in your head. And we ended up going with heirloom. It was either that or there was some other company name, that brand name that just, now that I think about it, I don't even want to say it. It's kind of silly, but at the time,
that wasn't tomatoes. Tomatoes is a formal name for a coffee company.
You saw the whiteboard that you must have. Tomatoes coffee. Yeah, no.
Sure.
Yeah, so that's how we chose heirloom, and it's kind of like we want to pay homage to the product itself. We want to communicate to the customer that the varietal of coffee that we're choosing is a very robust varietal. It's been around for a very long time, but also we want to pay homage to the story of not just my family, but the family of the farmers that are involved. One of our coffees come from a third generation coffee farmer, so there's like a lot of alignment in this industry and a lot of similarities and parallel stories.
What's the state of the varietals? Are we full blown GMO coffee at this point? Is it like, I'm sure there's been a lot of breeding in whatever the last 50, 70 years, I would assume, but like, could you give that as the lay of the land? Like, how does it compare to like the state of like corn and soybeans today or something like that? That's like, so.
Yeah. Coffee is, I mean, when we say GMO is like, there's GMO and then there's breeding, right?
Right.
I mean, coffee has been bred to be robust. Any crop that exists today at scale has been bred to be robust.
Right.
I'm not too familiar with the GMO part of coffee. As I understand it, it's either non-existent or it's not as much.
Yeah.
I think the bigger issue is more about pesticides in coffee. That is more of something that I'm familiar with, and I know that that's a major problem. I'm not too familiar with the GMO side. In fact, I don't think there's much GMO in coffee, period. I do know that there's major corporations that are working on it, and we can talk about that when we talk about the rock certification part, but there are companies that are working on something, and they're trying to like hide it by calling it regeneratively grown.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I'll tell you a funny story when we get to that. It's kind of insane, actually. But yeah, we'll get there in a minute.
Tell us about the pesticide problem. I mean,
there's a lot of pesticide being used in coffee and non-organic coffees and non-regenerative organic certified coffees. Pesticides are a huge, huge problem. And so like, people say, hey, what's regenerative coffee? And to tell that story, I have to tell the story of what degenerative coffee is. And so I tell the story of how topsoil is being washed away at a record rate, and people are like, oh, that's terrible. Yeah, let's just, I go, no, like, you don't get it. Like, let me tell you why this is so bad. Farmer sees a crop that he wants to make viable, so he buys pesticides and nitrates and all these synthetic inputs from the other side of the world, puts them on a giant ship, ships it over to wherever it's growing, let's just say South America for now, burns all that diesel, puts it on a truck, burns the diesel to get up to the mountain, gets to the mountain, pours it onto the soil, brings these big industrial machines, burning diesel, tills the soil, rips out the ground, and plants a crop. And that season, that crop is awesome. Great yield, tastes great, relatively. And, he does pretty well. Well, the problem is once the rains come, everything that they just did washes right away into the creeks, which ends up into the rivers, which ends up into the oceans. And so the only option the farmer has is to go out, buy more synthetic fertilizer from the other side of the world, burn a bunch of diesel, bring it to their side of the world, and it creates this cycle of destruction and degeneration. And it's a real measurable problem that exists in this world, especially in the coffee growing industry. I mean, like, you guys are like regen guys, it exists in every other crop. I can only speak for coffee, but it's a real problem. And farmers are losing land because of erosion, and they're losing land because they're just not able to make any real money off of the product. And so the large corporations are coming and taking over and moving into like mechanical agriculture. It's a solution that we can solve by switching to regenerative coffee or regeneratively grown products. Now, for us, like we go a step further with ROC certification, which is really important, but there's a lot of pesticide use in coffee around the world. Any non-organic coffee there's a good chance that it's been filled with pesticides.
You just set the table really well for like the conventional model, and I love the way you told the story about like where the inputs are produced, how they get there. That was beautifully done. But tell us, like, how is regenerative coffee produced? Paint that.
Yeah, regenerative. Yeah, and so the opposite of the degeneration system is the regeneration system, and so farmers have found a really unique way to grow coffee. And one of those ways, so we were in Honduras a couple weeks ago or 3 weeks ago to the first Regenerative Organic Certified coffee farm in the country, and one of the first in the world. And it's run by this brother and sister, Edgar and Karen, and their story is pretty cool. I don't know if you remember, like maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, there was like a big group of Central American migrants that were moving to the United States slowly. It was like a caravan. Very scary situation, according to the news, whatever that means. And so the brother and sister, Edgar and Karen, decided to stay in this town called Marcala in Honduras. And they ended up, getting a plot of land that was kind of like not very viable, wasn't really producing anything. And they decided to practice regenerative agriculture. So it was kind of like a dry land. So they dug small holes to plant the coffee in, but they also created a mulch mix using coffee husk and coffee cherry skin. And then they go up. I mean, this is like a crazy story. They go up to the Montecillo Mountains to like caves and whatever, harvest microorganismic soil, bring it down to the farms, mix it into their mulch, and then they put this like really long thermometer into the soil, and they show how the bacterial and microorganismal activity is creating heats up the soil, and then they like turn it or whatever, and it creates this super, super nutrient dense mulch. And so they poured that mulch all over the coffee right before the rains came. And then the rains came, flooded the dry area, and all those nutrients went into the soil. Well, now these microorganisms are naturally tilling the soil, creating an opportunity for the soil to be a lot more viable. But then they prioritize cover crops to be grown. So there's like grasses and there's native small plants all around. It creates this like incredible spongy layer on the topsoil, which you can feel. So we went to one of the original, what they called like a year one regenerative farm, like a dead farm. And then we went to a fully functioning ROC certified regenerative farm. And like the first farm, you can knock on the ground. It was like rock solid clay. Yeah. And you go to the regenerative farm and you're bouncing. It was so full of life. And like I picked up the soil, it was like worms and bugs and like it was alive. And the other one, like you just pick it up and just looked like it was a desertification had kind of taken over. And so the process is very different. But what's also important is they do this all without any synthetic inputs whatsoever. It's literally just mulch, microorganisms from the mountains, cover crops, and then they allow their like chickens or whatever, the animals, to run free and eat all the bugs. And it's an input-free, other than naturally occurring inputs, input-free way to farm. And the difference between the A dry farm and the B regenerative farm was day and night. It was like you're looking at one of those. It was almost like a marketing photo. Like, this is what's going to happen at the end of the world. That's what happened at the beginning, and then you go to the regenerative farm. It's like everything is alive. And what was awesome is they started brother and sister to create this co-op, 9 years ago. Now they support 400 families, and they're the largest co-op in that area. Wow. They provide jobs for all these families, and it's year-round income, right? Because you have to maintain the farm. It's not just harvest season where they come and grow the coffee. So it creates a social structure with economic opportunity and upward mobility that didn't exist in the past. And so when you go to this area, Marcala, it's in La Paz, Honduras now, it's vibrant, it's alive, the people are alive, they're happy. It's a quality of life that's measurable. And I'm probably going off topic. The question was like, what is regenerative farming and coffee? But it's an entire system, right? It affects everybody involved. from starting with a really dry piece of land to growing coffee in a really fertile piece of land, that process is it's so wholesome and so fulfilling for these families that are involved. And oh my God, the level of pride that these farmers feel was so palpable. Like I've never met a group of people so proud of what they do before. Really, it was shot, like brought tears to my eyes. It was incredible. They were so happy with what they did in this area that I was like, this is it. Like we can all do this. It's like 20% of the world. Let's just try this. And it'll change a lot of what's happening on the planet. And I think the issue is going to be, when you look at conventional farming and you look at mechanical agriculture and all the yields involved, and when larger corporations get involved, I think they tend to sometimes forget about the people that are involved in the growing process, whether on purpose or not. It could be a very destructive system if you're not using regenerative farming. And then for us, going a step further with ROC certification was even more important because it just verifies and is kind of the gold standard for regenerative and organic farming. Did that 20-minute rant answer your question?
That's great. It was great. I love it. That was our first big time coffee breakdown. I think, Good Sam's the only other brand we have with coffee, nice. And that was a long time ago, and we didn't get super in the weeds on that specifically with Heather. Hovik, let's talk about the certification piece. I want to double back to the manufacturing and the coffee roasting piece, but the certification piece, I think that we've had plenty of people talk about the certification kind of discourse in the space. We've had people talk about ROC. We know why it's so important. There's plenty of information out on there. I would like you to educate the listeners on why it's so important in the coffee category, because it seems like there is a much higher premium on certifications for coffee versus some other things that we see in the grocery store. So just break that down for us.
Right. So there's like three things we need to understand when it comes to the coffee industry and ROC certification. The first is every certification that a farm produces or a co-op produces costs the buyer, me, a premium. So if you're ROC certified, you're also fair trade certified, and you're also organic certified. So you're talking triple certification, and there's a premium for each one. And so ROC certification specifically, to me, is the gold standard in regenerative. But I think in the coffee industry, it's the most verifiable, transparent, measurable way to cause positive impact and positive change on the ground. The other thing about regenerative organic certification is that their three pillars are topsoil, animal welfare, and fairness to farmers. But like fairness to farmers, we keep going back to the farmer, but the ROC model is so much more in depth and so much more real. Like the freedom of association, it's a bullet point. I think if you check out ROC's website, or I haven't been there in a while, but it's a freedom of association. And you kind of like glance over that, you don't really understand what that means. But coffee has been traditionally a very like a group run organization. So farmers generally get the worst end of the stick. There's usually in traditional agriculture, there's usually like a group of call them distributors, call them whatever you want, that kind of drive around the farms and say, hey, today's price is this. This is what you're getting for your coffee. You have no choice, by the way. This isn't about you. It's about me. This is what I'm going to pay you. You have some certifications you want on your, no problem. I'll give you a couple extra cents. No big deal. You have no choice. And I see you've already made the coffee, so you have about 24 hours before it goes bad. That's your decision. And so it puts farmers in a really tough spot where they have to sell their yield, whatever it is. I mean, these are really small farms. These are like, backyard farms that are growing it. And so it's very controlled and very unfair. And so with regenerative organic certification, the freedom of association is so critical because the farmer sets the price. There's no one else who sets the price. There's no distributor. I should say the co-op or the whatever the certified group is, because these are groups of many different farmers, but they all have a vote and they all have a say. They are all making the decision together. And when we buy regenerative organic certified coffee, we pay the price that the farmer feels fair. We don't really negotiate. We don't nickel and dime, because we know that for the certification, it's so important for that group of farmers, but also I think the consumer is willing to pay 5, 10, 15 cents more to know that their dollars are supporting good versus bad. On the topsoil part for rock certification in coffee, it's really important because coffee is, a typical coffee plant lasts for years. And so the topsoil is even more critical. And there's very little opportunity to save that soil if it washes away. I mean, you have to basically pull. I'm not a farmer. I don't.
Yeah.
I'm a coffee guy, but as far as I understand, you have to kind of start over if your soil is gone. It's a little difficult. So, rock certification for us was really important. And also, I think rock is at this point in time the most understandable certification in the viewpoint of the consumer. And I think that as it's growing, it's just gaining market share. So it's really important for us to be part of the rock certification movement, because I think the consumer just recognizes it more. And really, they are, in my opinion, they are the gold standard of regenerative/organic certification. There's really the level of transparency is crazy. I tell people when we do our reporting, it's like they want to know which group picked the coffee. They want to know which group transported the coffee from the farm to the drying station. They want to know which drying station it went to, what hulling station it went to, which transport station it went to from the hulling station to the back. I mean, every step of the way is documented, and it provides a structure that makes it incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to greenwash and hide uncertified coffees, which is kind of standard operating procedure for this industry for the past 100 years. It's kind of a BS-free way to do it, in my opinion.
It really feels like in that category, the buyers and the retailers are demanding that level of certification versus maybe some other categories where it's not up to that point yet. I mean, that is the most certified aisle in the store when I walk a Whole Foods, to me, is the coffee products, right? So it seems like it has extra weight there as well.
Absolutely. The coffee aisle is basically, it's kind of table stakes. You're not getting in unless you have something in terms of either sustainability or organic. But we kind of knew that sustainability was going to be one of the two major pillars of the brand. But the other thing is, if it doesn't taste good, no one's going to buy it. So that is the whole other, that we'll get into the culinary list in a minute, I guess. But sure, they'll buy it. The packaging is pretty. It looks cool. It's different looking, whatever. It's great. I'll buy it one time. But if it doesn't taste good, I'm never going to buy it again. And so we wanted to make sure that it was just fantastic, because if they buy it again, their dollars directly go to support the farmers. I mean, it's as cut and dry as it gets.
Yeah.
Yeah, Hovik, we're on to quality, which is a great segue. I really want to talk about this. And I think coffee, wine, and chocolate are three primary categories where regenerative can really showcase the nutritional and or taste benefits, right? And I'm really curious to get your take on this, because you've been ingrained in coffee, like you said, since you were 8 years old. When you first started playing with regenerative coffee beans, did you immediately notice a difference in quality? And if so, what was that experience like? And then take that a step further and talk about how you're roasting these beans, what makes that different, and how you're telling this story to the consumer. Because to your point, triple certification, there's a price premium attached. Yep. How are you telling that story to get people to make that initial purchase?
Yeah, when we first got into the regenerative space with this brand, and we started roasting regeneratively farmed coffees, we noticed right away that something was different. Flavors are a little more pronounced, and they're a little more, a little brighter. But you can't have A without B. In this case, you need to be able to roast it in a very unique way. And so when we got into roasting this brand specifically, we wanted to do something that was very different from the traditional specialty coffee suggested roasting model. And this is where background kind of gets into it, and my history of being in coffee for so long. I roasted coffee for a long time, and I've seen so many different ways to roast. I wanted it to be to taste different, and so I started to little bit research fine dining techniques, and we had somebody who helped us out a little bit to kind of like guide us in the right direction in terms of like a mirepoix technique in fine dining, or like base flavors. And I said, this is really interesting. What if we can do something that presents itself in a very different way in terms of taste? And so that's where what we turned into the culinary roasting style. We say that roasted a specialty grade coffee, it's great table stakes. You have to have really good coffee for it to be on the shelf, but specialty roasted in the same way. So what we do different is we follow that culinary roasting style where we ingrain and we enunciate and we kind of like focus on flavors that may not necessarily be present in the coffee bean. And so we slow the roasting process down in certain stages and we speed it up in certain stages, including the very end stage, which is the caramelization stage, where all the sugars in the coffee caramelize. We have created a roasting system that we call culinary, but it delivers flavor as you drink it. So you'll have a forward. When you first drink the coffee, you'll get this like intense forward, and then you'll get a solid body, and then you'll get some sort of sweet finish. And most of our coffees have a very sweet finish because of that late stage caramelization in the coffee roasting. And so what you're getting is like, you sip this coffee and it like coats your tongue and it's sticky and it's syrupy and it's really sweet. And then you stop drinking and like 20 minutes later, I can still taste this. It's really good. And what we're finding is that towards the end of the cup, when people finish drinking coffee, like they can still taste it for quite a while. And that's because of the end stage caramelization that we do. It's a very unique process. It's also very difficult to do at the scale that we roast. You can do it in a 5 kilo roaster. You can do it in a 10 kilo roaster. We have a 280 kilo roaster. So we roast about 600 pounds at a time every 15 minutes. And it's like incredibly difficult to hit the mark every single time. Because if you don't, you lost the batch. So that's the roasting process. It's very different than traditional roasting style. And when you drink our coffees, it's like a sensory experience. It's not a culinary. I mean, it's not a coffee. It is a truly fully immersed sensory experience. And it really tastes amazing. And so how do we communicate that to the consumer? Well, I can write like a 40-page description on the back, but no one's really going to read that. So we really focused on the premium packaging. That was a really big deal for us. We wanted the packaging itself to say, hey, I'm very different from everything else on the store shelf. I'm very premium. If you feel the bag, it's like super thick. It's
the
like
gold. I love the gold font.
Thank you.
So awesome. Yeah.
Premium. What about this is different? It's the packaging itself looks very premium. And so when the customer buys the coffee, opens up a little zipper thing, and the first thing they do is like smell the coffee. It's like, this is, oh my God, wow. It smells like chocolate. Like, let's try this. And then they'll taste the coffee. And what we're finding is people get Heirloom as a gift because it's so pretty. And once they taste it, they cannot go back to their traditional cup. And we've seen just incredible growth for the brand so far. I mean, look, we're only a little under 2 years old. Really, we've been on shelf since March of last year, nationally. And the quality really speaks for itself. And so what we're finding is our customers tend to buy it after they taste it because it tastes so good, but they buy it because of the packaging. So it's a 1-2 punch. It's in what I've learned is the best way to communicate the quality of your product to the consumer. I think we probably had 20 or 30 versions of this packaging before we landed on where we need to go. It was like, I'm surprised they took my calls after that. I was like, hey guys, good job, but can we just tweak this a little bit? I could just imagine he sees Hovik calling. He's like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? What are we going to start from the beginning again? But it was so critical for us. I mean, there's some things you can't skimp on, and the perception the customer has like 2 seconds, right? It's a second and a half to make a decision when they're walking through a grocery store. It has to really speak to the consumer's emotional side, and it has to speak to the consumer on a premium level. And then once they get into the product, it tastes incredible.
And I mean, I'm curious how what y'all are doing with the electric roasters. Hovik plays into this whole deal. So like we'll link it to the show notes. But y'all have I think 14 electric roasters, and it was like almost $1 million plus grant with the California Energy Commission to get these in y'all's facility. So is there like a carbon neutral or net zero like play here? And just talk about the whole electric roasting piece.
We have. So there's 16 electric coffee roasters made by Bellwether Coffee Roasting Company. They're out of Berkeley, California, and so we said, look, no one's really going to take us seriously unless we become an authority in regenerative coffee. And so I said, I want to create the world's first regenerative coffee research lab. I want to be able to try different coffees in a setting where the consumer or the buyer or anyone interested could come and see the coffee roast and taste the coffees. And so what happens is we get samples from all over the world. I shouldn't say all over the world, really South and Central America, because that's basically where rock certified coffee exists right now.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to make an immersive experience where people can come watch the coffee roast, but also is like, if we're going to do this, I don't want to put a ton of smoke into the air. In the Bay Area, it's very regulated, but even then, nothing's perfect. And so we were going to end up buying some traditional coffee roasters to fill into the lab. But then I was approached by somebody who said, "Hey, have you seen these Bellwether roasters?"
I gotta pause you here. Are traditional coffee roasters run on like propane or gas, or how does it typically work?
Yeah, so they're run on either propane or natural gas, but traditionally in a like a scalable setting, it's all natural gas. And so electric coffee roasting, with the exception of a handful of places in the world, is all basically run on fossil fuels. So
I had no idea.
It's all, I mean, almost all natural gas and propane. There's a few places that do electric. There's one in Canada that just launched that does but they're like on the commercial side. So I'm not familiar with them, but I just like read a blip somewhere. They do like 100 bajillion pound coffee every 10 seconds or something. That's a crazy number. So it's a lot of fossil fuels are used. So for us, the regenerative lab was important because we wanted to tell the story of the coffee and the farmer, but at the same time, like, just to display coffee, I don't want to burn natural gas and then off-put all the smoke. So the Bellwethers are 100% electric and they're zero emission. So there's no smoke that comes out. It's like filters it out. It's a pretty crazy process. And so we're able to run these 16 roasters without having to worry about outputting the smoke or even getting involved. Like it's basically, the lab itself is a net zero lab when it comes to roasting. Now we have brewers and stuff that use electricity, the output is net zero. There's no smoke or any type of output. Eventually, we're going to run the entire lab on solar. The grant was really cool because California wants to lead the way in clean manufacturing in all aspects of manufacturing. It's not just coffee. And where we are, my factory behind me, it's next to one of the most polluted corridors in the state, the 880 freeway. And so I think there was a little bit of an alignment with the state. When we applied for the grant, we were going to apply for one roaster, and I think that was like, I can't remember how much it was. And I was like, well, if we're really going to grow the brand the way we want to grow the brand, we're going to need more.
Let's do 16. It's not that much different than one. Send it.
Okay, so every step of this process, from the birth of this brand until like this morning when I walked in, people have been telling me I can't do it. And it's been a really interesting ride because I'm starting to really enjoy when people tell me I can't do something. I kind of go a little further and I like to prove a point. And so
that's shocking to hear with the little that I know you, Hovik. That doesn't check out at all based on our interaction so far.
You know what? I grew up in very humble means. I had to like make my own, I grew up in a factory. My parents didn't have a lot of money. I mean, we're just like normal.
What
people.
Country did he come from, by the way? You didn't share.
He came from northern Iran, and we're Armenian.
Wow.
So we're Armenian from northern Iran. And so he left the mountains with a backpack, like walked across Europe to get on a plane. Like, got on a plane, didn't know where the hell he was going. It's crazy.
Badass.
Wow.
But that story was just like repeated a billion times. So it's in my head. So when people tell me I can't do something, I think it's like a really lazy way out. It's just great for somebody to say you can't do it. What a great opportunity. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to get my hands dirty. Or let's hire a bunch of consultants to find a way to, I'm like, guys, just do it. So when we went to the CEC, I said, yeah, I'd like to get 16 roasters because this is my intended output. But this is how much carbon you're going to take out of the atmosphere if we do this deal. And they ended up approving it. We ended up buying the 16 roasters, and we launched the lab officially, I think it was like 2 months ago or maybe 3 months ago or something like that. And it has been a really unique space because of all the R&D that's being done here. We're tasting coffees from all over the world, and we're inviting farmers to come and tell their stories in our space. And so it really connects the entire supply chain from the guys that grow the coffee and the end user, the consumer, and they get to interact. I think that's really important because if we're not telling the story, no one else is going to do it. I mean, the brand has grown pretty quickly, and I feel like I have an obligation to tell the story of the people that grow the product, but also like, dude, we got to save the future of coffee. It's super important. Like, I want to drink coffee before I get too old, and I want it to be here, and I want it to taste really good. I don't want to have to switch to like different varietals that are climate friendly that don't taste as full bodied or fresh or good or whatever. So the lab was an effort to tell the story of regenerative coffee, and so far it's been doing an incredible job, and it's the most sustainable. I think it is the largest collection of electric bellwether roasters in the world right now, and it's the largest regenerative coffee research lab on the planet at the moment.
Amazing.
Hovik, you keep talking about saving coffee, and what I love about that is the picture you painted about the co-op, because when you first said saving coffee, to me, I interpreted that as saving the cup of coffee somebody drinks. But now it feels like saving coffee is saving the coffee industry and supporting the co-ops who are doing what you're doing with that commercialization piece and the upward mobility and the creating and supporting this farmer's story where the people are proud of the work they're doing and they're having a positive impact, not just for themselves, but for their family and for their environment. So
hell yeah.
Just in the 45 minutes we've been talking, saving coffee has a whole new meaning to me, which I really appreciate. I also mentioned
it's
like
not
somebody
just
who
coffee.
Right, yeah, it's not just coffee, and I mean, I don't drink coffee, but I've never been more interested in drinking coffee than I am right now. So credit to you and the story you're telling. But you also talk about building this brand and how the brand side is going really well. So talk to us about how you ended up landing Sprouts nationally. Was that the first retailer you went to, and like what the commercialization strategy has been so far? What the reception is going like? Just walk us through some of that retail distribution piece.
Sure. So we like soft launched the brand at the end of 2021, but we didn't really announce it until 2022. And I think that was like March or something. And we were not on shelf until May. The very first grocery store that we put our product on the shelf was a grocery store called Berkeley Bowl in Berkeley, California, which is, for those of you who are familiar with Berkeley Bowl, it is like one of the greatest places you could go to be introduced to natural foods, but like just incredible tasting foods. Everything there is just out of this world delicious. And so I approached the buyer and I said, hey, I'd love to get this product on the shelf. And she looked at me and she goes, oh, another coffee guy. Okay. So like,
right. Oversaturated category.
It is the most saturated category in the grocery store. I mean, buyers are pitched probably 100 times a week. I mean, I'm not exaggerating. And so they're like, she's like, all right, I'll give you a few minutes. Just hurry up. Like, guys, gotta go. I'm like, okay, first regenerative coffee brand, roast down the road. It's incredible tasting coffee. And bags are really pretty. And please let me put this on your shelf. Like, I'll give it to you for free. Just please, like, give me this one opportunity. And she looked at me and she's like, fine. Okay. You can have the bottom shelf and you can have three slots because we're moving these products. I said, perfect. I put the 3 coffees in. We get a call that week, said all of your coffee sold out. Our store opens in 30 minutes. So run and fill the shelf. And we're like, okay. So we ran, filled the shelf, coffee sold out again, ran, filled the shelf again. And we ended up, I guess we were like the the most sold coffee on the floor. Like nobody looks on the floor.
Yeah.
And so then I think it started to move upward, and so it really took off there, and we used that to prove our concept. And we just went grocery store to grocery store, knocking on doors, shaking hands, building a customer base. And then I wanted it to be like something that was special. So we ended up submitting the coffee to the Good Food Awards at that time. This is kind of a crazy story. I'll just say it quickly, but like I just walked by the roaster one day and I just took a scoop of coffee out. I said, "Hey guys, I talked to Kelly Zeisner. She's our VP of Success. She manages all operations." And I said, "Hey Kelly, could we submit this to the Good Food Awards?" She's like, "Dude, we have to roast like 50 different batches and taste the best one. Make sure it's absolutely perfect. Who cares? Just send the coffee. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen?" So we sent the coffee, and there was 17. By the way, this is like we can't do it. So there was 1,700 coffees that were tasted, and we ended up winning. We were one of the winners of the Good Food Award.
Wow.
And so we took that award and we went store to store and said, "Hey, I'll give you a free fill." So local, right? Small stores. Can you please put this on the shelf? And they did. And every store that we put our coffee on the shelf ended up either selling out or started, just the velocity was crazy. And then another step was I want to like submit to one of the larger companies. Can we do this? And everyone said, "No, you have to be an established brand. It's like you don't know what you're doing." I was like, "All right, whatever. I'll just go on their website and I'll submit the product." And like all of a sudden we get a PO. We won the Golden Ticket Award from KeHE. And that really kind of, I think, set us up because we were given access to their DCs at a much lower rate because capital is difficult, right? And so we submitted to Sprouts. We ended up getting this like crazy PO. I'm looking at it, I'm like, "What the hell is this?" And I call our rep, and she's like, "Oh yeah, you're going national with Sprouts." I was like, "What? What? We're going national with Sprouts? Like Sprouts, the store?" She's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Oh wow." And so Sprouts gave us a chance, and we had 3 SKUs in store at Sprouts. We just launched, and that was in March of last year. And so from March of last year to now, we've built a following of a lot of independents and natural stores, regional groups, and a few larger stores as well, and a lot of smaller stores. We're the fastest growing coffee company in the natural set, according to Spins, last 52 weeks or something. And it's moving very quickly for us. We just added 2 more SKUs to Sprouts and to our national offerings. And as of Expo, so as of the first day of Expo at the Organic Marketplace, we announced that we're 100% rock certified on all of our SKUs that are available nationally.
Let's go.
So and those 5 of those 6 will be available at Sprouts. I think they're doing the reset now, or in a couple of weeks or something. I think they're going to move through existing inventory, and then we're going to switch to the new rocks. But that was a huge deal for me. It was so important for us. So it's been a wild ride. We're just at the beginning stages. We've sold more units than anyone said that we can do in a stage this early, and so it's been an interesting experience so far. And I'm just waiting for the next thing for somebody to tell me I can't do. Maybe I'll do it.
I love that story for a couple of reasons. I think a lot of brands get these like really big eyes, like, "Hey, I want to go national," and all these retailers right off the bat, right? And I love the start in your backyard store with people, super premium consumer, aligned with your brand, right? Yeah. And get your turns moving there. And it sounds like you guys were able to achieve that very quickly. But one of the pitfalls of retail is to go too wide, too quick. And then you end up with not category average, like subcategory average velocities. Right. And you have to overinvest in all those doors just to reach like category threshold. So I love that story. It's super helpful. And let's take it to like what's next. So you've got KeHE locked in. I know that there's some weird stuff happening with UNFI right now. Like, is that the next step, or is it to continue to saturate within the KeHE markets, or how are you looking at the next steps for your company? And that could be either the retail side, like I'm focusing on now, or maybe there's a DTC play, or maybe there's food service. Like, what is in the future for Heirloom?
So I should just add that right now we do a lot of food service as well. Where we sell coffee to like forward-thinking, mission-aligned companies and campuses.
Nice.
We invented the world's first 100% backyard compostable food service packaging, because plastic and coffee is like a huge problem.
Amazing.
Wow.
It's not in our retail bag just yet, but it is in the food service bag. It's made completely of paper. There's another opportunity that I can talk about if we had more time. But another one of those you can't do it stories. And so I was like, no, let's just do it. And we ended up selling to one of the largest tech companies in the country, both on the quality of the product, but also the fact that there was zero plastic. So the bag, the pallet wrap is compostable, backyard compostable, not commercially compostable, backyard compostable.
Wow.
And so we deliver the full pallet to the distribution center without using a single piece of plastic. The only thing that's not compostable, I think the pallet itself is like heat treated, like they use heat treated wood, and then the nails in the pallet you can't compost, obviously. But yeah, that was a big deal for us. What's next? We are working on some super top secret stuff right now.
Okay, so we won't talk about it. It's okay.
If I had $1 for every time we've heard that on the pod.
So KeHE has been an incredible partner for us. I'll say this: I've heard both like great stories and not so great stories, but KeHE has been a fantastic partner. They've helped us every step of the way. They've been a great resource for us, and they've really put us in a position. The quality of the product is so important, but they've helped us along the way to really reach where we need to be. We're working with a national broker right now called Greenspoon. Maybe you heard of them. They've been a great partner as well, a great resource. So the KeHE's, we're going to work on saturating KeHE. UNFI is part of the conversation. And then we're working really hard to get into like other larger natural retailers right now. We have the capacity. This is the thing. Unlike a lot of smaller brands that start out and have to claw their way to building capacity or going through a co-packer, we're coffee roasters. We have the capacity to supply coffee to the entire nation. So we went the opposite direction. It was really important for us to have that foundation before we launch, because I don't want to get involved in growing pains over stuff that we could have done beforehand. It's kind of major importance for me. So I think saturating the natural space would be really important to me before we move into conventional. And our plan is to move as quickly as possible. It all comes down to the quality of the product. It's doing very well. It's a delicious product.
Thank you.
Love it. We look forward to podcast number 2, where we can cover the top secret things, not in secrecy anymore.
Yeah, give me till like September.
Cool. Well, let's go macro to kind of take it home, Hovik. We're talking about saving coffee. We're talking about a lot of fun stuff, but just, the final question that we ask everyone, which we'd love your take on, is just how do we get Regen brands to have 50% market share by 2050? What are we going to do?
Yeah, it's not an easy question, but I think that the most important thing is we have to educate the consumer more than anything else, because the consumer is what drives growth in every category. There's nothing else that drives growth, no matter what any consultant or any grocery guru or anyone who's been doing this for 100 years. If the consumer is not interested, it's not going to sell. And so educating the consumer is the number one priority for us in the coffee space. And so if we want to make regenerative a bigger market share, we want it to be a significant market share, we have to educate the consumer as to why regenerative is so important. In coffee specifically, why rock is so important, and why their dollars can support good instead of supporting mass agro or something like that. The other thing is, I think that people generally don't want to be causing a problem on this planet. I think people don't generally want to be evil. I just think that people really enjoy convenience. So if you can provide a product that is excellent tasting, and I mean excellent, like no, it's not just good, it has to be outstanding, and it is 100% regenerative, or in our case, regenerative organic certified. And the price point is not way above where it needs to be. As long as the switch for the consumer is easy and they can just grab your product over another, I think that's a way to drive trial in regenerative products. And that's what it is. I mean, people, as long as it's convenient, easy, and relatively affordable, I think people will make the switch. We have to drive the consumer. You want to make a difference in this industry, roll your sleeves up, go do your demos at your stores. I spend every weekend at every local store telling the story, not even about the coffee, but about regenerative agriculture. And everyone that I told, from the most conservative to the most liberal people, they all cared. They want food, they want to be able to support a population. I think that was something that I've learned along the way on this journey that's been so important and so resonating. The other thing is, I mean, if we really can't figure this out, just kind of go ask a farmer, because one thing I've learned is the only group of people I know other than myself that really perform when you tell them they can't do something is farmers. So, I mean, let's talk to them. I think their input is critical. Educate the consumer, talk to the farmer, connect the two. And I think that there's an opportunity to save the future of all agriculture, not just coffee.
Love that answer, man. We were just talking on a Regen Coalition call, AC and I, about the importance the brands play in connecting consumers to farmers. That is what the brand does better than anything else. We also very much agree that consumer education is going to be the key unlock. So it's always great to hear somebody else say what you believe, as arrogant as that might be. But we have the same theory of change, man, and I think that's what we got to do. I also love the way you talked about the convenience factor. Make it easy for people to switch. And have a product that tastes excellent, so that once they've tried it, they can't go back to the way they.
That's exactly right.
Before, you know, so I think
you're absolutely. It's not a nice to have. It's I have to have, because this is the product I want. It's so good. And by the way, it says regenerative. I forgot what it means, but it's important. And so we need to buy regenerative. Like, if we can get consumers in that attitude, like, you can preach all you want. You can sit, you can complain, you can say, the Monsantos of the world are coming to take our, they're going to destroy the world. You're only going to get so far sitting and complaining, unless you get out there and do something and create a brand that's it's all about your mission, and that's an incredibly good quality product. I mean, I think we can do it. We were approached by a coffee company, a coffee distributor, like a raw coffee distributor. And they came, knocked on our door, came to the factory. We gave them some time. We didn't really know who they were, because they're operating under like a third, fourth level name. Like, we have regenerative coffee and it's going to be incredible. I go, oh, cool. What's regenerative? And I wanted to hear them tell the story. And like, oh, well, you pay a little extra and we give you the right to use this label. I go, okay, cool. But like, what does that mean? You can put it on the front of your bag. You can put it on the back of your bag. I go, okay, cool. That's awesome. But like, what is regenerative? Oh yeah, it's super sustainable. I go, okay, but like, what does that mean? It means that you can put the label on anywhere you want, and we can list you on our. I'm like, oh my god, is this guy serious? And then I found out this is one of the larger like ag companies on the planet, basically creating like a greenwash system of selling regenerative. It's not even regenerative, and it wasn't organic, and I just felt like. I felt like if this is who we're up against, this might not be that hard. The dude couldn't answer a simple question. I mean, maybe we have an opportunity to really change the food system. And to answer your question, by 2050, I mean, if this is who we're up against, it's just educate the consumer, and they will be more than happy to spend their dollars to do the right thing. It's an opinion. I don't know, but we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong.
What was coming to mind for me during what you just laid out there was like, we have to give people agency without blame, shame, like whether it is the consumers or the farmers. And it feels like we're trying to give them a lot of agency through blame and shame, which is like not effective. And so we have to make it feel good and taste good to do good. And
no one wants to be talked down to. No one wants to be felt like they're part of a problem. They want to be part of a solution. And if you can convince them that it's not that hard to be part of the solution, I know you enjoy comfort. I know you enjoy ease and everything's super easy here in this side of the world, but like just slightly out of your comfort zone for just a second, try something different. That is the beginning of change right there. I mean, it's really the only way to do it. And if you don't like it, just call us and we'll refund your back.
Right. For the listeners who want to learn more, heirloomcoffeeroasters.com. You can check out all the beautiful packaging and the SKUs. If you don't have a Sprouts nearby, maybe check out your local retailer that pulls from KE, although most consumers might not know what that is. And yeah, my key takeaways from this podcast: coffee is life, and also to co-opt another phrase, just do it. Yeah. So
just do it.
Yeah.
There we go. But Hovik, man, thank you so much.
Don't listen to anyone. Don't listen to anyone who tells you won't be able to do something. People love to tell you that.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us, brother. Inspiring stuff.
It's my
Appreciate you
pleasure.
making the
Thank
time.
you. I really appreciate you guys and everything you guys do to spread the word of regenerative agriculture and now regenerative coffee. And so you guys are a major part of this movement. And I think together we can all revolutionize the way that products are sold on the grocery shelf, and we can really spread the word of regenerative, which is critical.
That's the goal, brother.
Absolutely. Thank you, bro.
All right, take care.
Thanks, Hovik.
For show notes, episode transcripts, and more information on our guests and what we discuss on the show, check out our website, regen-brands.com. That is regen-brands.com. You can also find our Regen recaps on the website. Regen recaps take less than 5 minutes to read and cover all the key points of the full hour-long conversations. You can check out our YouTube channel, Regen Brands Podcast, for all of our episodes with both video and audio. The best way to support our work is to give us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform, subscribe to future episodes, and share the show with your friends. Thanks for tuning in to the Regen Brands Podcast, brought to you by the Regen Coalition and Outlaw Ventures. We hope you learned something new in this episode, and it empowers you to use your voice, your time, and your dollars to help us build a better and more regenerative food system. Love you guys.